Welcome to Restless Killers and Mysteries with Roger Heilig, your personal journey into the bizarre world of unsolved killings and mysterious stories. Today's spine-chilling episode includes Beyond the Grassy Knoll, How JFK's Death Changed American Society Forever by A.M. Wolfe is available on Amazon and Audible. Strap in, because we're about to reveal the dark, enigmatic narrative of the Zodiac Killer. A dark stranger stalked the streets of late 60s California, leaving a trail of coded messages, taunting notes, and unanswered questions. Whether you're a seasoned true crime fan or a curious newbie, today's program will take you through the spooky maze of one of America's most notorious unsolved cases. Let's get started. The late 1960s in California, an era of groovy vibes, flower power, and a strong undercurrent of social upheaval. The Golden State was a cultural revolution hotspot, from the sun-soaked beaches of Southern California, where surfers chased the perfect wave, to the streets of San Francisco, which echoed with protest songs and appeals for peace and love. It was a place brimming with life, energy, and a hint of defiance against traditional conventions. In 1967, the Summer of Love drew tens of thousands of young people to San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury area, where they embraced counterculture and reject the establishment. Music festivals like as Monterey Pop featured memorable performances by Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and The Who, cementing California's status as the birthplace of rock and roll. Meanwhile, Los Angeles was the center of the entertainment industry, generating films and television shows that influenced American popular culture. However, there was a darker aspect to these lovely photos. The late 1960s also saw tremendous social upheaval and conflict. The civil rights movement was at its pinnacle, and anti-Vietnam War protests sometimes devolved into violent conflicts between demonstrators and police. The tension was evident, and headlines frequently included reports of political assassinations, violent protests, and growing crime rates. In this climate of both enlightenment and mayhem, the Zodiac Killer launched his epic spree. California, with all of its allure and promise, became the chilling setting for one of the most elusive and terrifying serial killers in American history. The Zodiac capitalized on the instability of the times, instilling dread among many and leaving police authorities perplexed. Imagine it. Northern California, with its foggy evenings and meandering highways, provided the ideal setting for crimes that would be etched in true crime history. People in the tranquil cities of Vallejo, Napa, and San Francisco witnessed a series of savage and seemingly random attacks that shattered their placid communities. The Zodiac's selection of victims and places seemed almost comical, yet it was terrifyingly effective. Young couples parked in lovers' lanes were among the first victims, their calm moments disturbed by the abrupt outbreak of violence. The killer's attacks became increasingly random and savage, creating an environment of anxiety and dread. Everyone was a potential target, and no one felt completely protected. The local media began to buzz with dramatic headlines, and the Zodiac took advantage of this by sending mocking letters and cryptic messages to newspapers. The public was frightened and morbidly captivated. The letters contained ciphers that, if solved, would reveal the killer's identity. They were published in newspapers, and everyone became an amateur detective, racing against time to decipher the signals and apprehend the maniac. Despite the severe situation, the 1960s attitude of communal cooperation and activity influenced how individuals responded. Neighborhood watch organizations developed, and locals came together to share information and defend each other. It was a time when the distinctions between good and evil became apparent, and people were forced to confront the unnerving reality that danger may wait just around the corner, no matter how sunny the day. In conclusion, the late 1960s in California were a time of contrasts, brightness and darkness, pleasure and dread, hope and fear. The Zodiac Killer arose against this chaotic and revolutionary backdrop, permanently altering people's sense of security in their daily lives. The stage was set for a mystery that still perplexes and intrigues us decades later. Okay folks, let's begin the Zodiac Killer's horrifying narrative with his first known attack, a night that set off one of America's most perplexing and terrifying serial killer investigations. Picture this, December 20th, 1968. We're in Vallejo, California, a little quiet hamlet on the northern side of San Francisco Bay. Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday, both high school students, decided to go on their first date. Oh, young love. They had planned to attend a Christmas concert at Hogan High School, but they never made it. Instead, they slipped over to a small section of Lake Herman Road known as a lover's lane. This gorgeous, isolated stretch was ideal for teenagers seeking some peace. But on this frigid December night, every pretense of romance was dashed. Around 11:15 p.m., they were sitting in David's Rambler station wagon when a mysterious man approached them. Eyewitness accounts are unclear. Some claim there was an argument, while others report it was silent and creepy. What is undisputed is that the attacker fired a shot into the automobile, striking David Faraday in the head. He died instantaneously. A promising life was ruthlessly cut short. The Vallejo Police Department and Solano County Sheriff's Office launched a full-scale investigation, but the lack of a clear motive baffled them. They spoke with witnesses who had seen the couple earlier that evening. classmates, acquaintances, family, anyone who could provide a lead. However, the mysterious figure that attacked David and Betty Lou appeared to have fled into the night. The media swiftly caught up on the issue, with local newspapers covering the horrible murder widely. Rumors began to circulate, with some believing it was a vindictive lover or a troubled individual holding a grudge. However, no one could have imagined at the time that this was the start of something much bigger and far more dangerous. Remember guys, this is the late 1960s. There are no mobile phones, no social media, and no rapid networked information exchange. News spread slowly, and police coordination across departments and jurisdictions was far from immediate. Despite the police's best efforts, leads quickly turned cold. The neighborhood was in shock, struggling with the terror that had unexpectedly entered their peaceful lives. They had no idea the Zodiac was making his terrible debut, and he was only getting started. So, with one heinous act, the Zodiac Killer laid the groundwork for his reign of evil. His premeditated moves, the disjointed and seemingly random killings, would develop patterns and instill dread not only locally but throughout the country. Ah, the fabled letters and ciphers of the Zodiac Killer, those perplexing messages that sent shivers down Californian spines and left cops scratching their heads. Let us delve into these tantalizing conversations that both taunted and scared. Our enigmatic fiend made his literary debut in August 1969, when he sent a series of letters to several newspapers. Consider this scenario. You're drinking your morning coffee and reading the San Francisco Chronicle when you come across a strong, bombastic letter from a self-proclaimed killer. What a nice way to start the day, right? The first batch of letters was distributed to 3 newspapers: the San Francisco Examiner, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the Vallejo Times-Herald. Each letter revealed a piece of a cipher, a cryptic puzzle, which the Zodiac demanded these newspapers post on their front pages, or he'd go on a kill spree over the weekend. This was not your ordinary complaint letter to the editor, guys. This was a declaration of horror wrapped in a riddle. The first cipher, known as the 408 symbol cipher, was very notorious. Amateur sleuths and professional cryptographers were left frustrated by the complicated series of symbols and letters. At least, that was the intention. It turned out that, while the code was confusing, it was not unbreakable. Within a week, a teacher and his wife had cracked the code. What's the message? Zodiac brags about his passion of murdering, which is quite disturbing. I like killing people because it is so much fun, he stated. Not exactly Shakespeare, but he made his point. If the ciphers didn't pique your interest, his subsequent correspondence certainly did. The Zodiac was nothing if not consistent, reminding everyone of his lethal schemes. He routinely sent letters explaining his atrocities, which sometimes included disturbing information known only to the killer and the authorities. A small murder memoir, if you will. The Zodiac's letters were a horrible combination of nursery rhyme simplicity and mysterious brutality. In his Exorcist letter dated January 29, 1974, he classified the horror film The Exorcist as the best satirical comedy I have ever seen. Believe me, Roger Ebert was not. The letter concluded with a twisted signature, a cross circle, his preferred insignia. Let us not forget the daunting 340-character encryption transmitted on November 8, 1969. It took 51 years for sleuths to properly decode it, courtesy to the advancement of current computing power. Unsurprisingly, the message continued his habit of selfish and terrifying self-praise, with a sprinkling of incoherence that even Zodiac fans couldn't understand. These letters muddied the waters, giving paradoxes and false leads that perplexed investigators. They depicted a killer who liked the psychological game, living off the terror and bewilderment he instilled. Each correspondence served as a breadcrumb and a red herring, obscuring the trail while keeping everyone focused on his macabre game. To summarize, the Zodiac's communications were just as important to his mythology as his violent actions. Each letter and cipher became the foundation of his public persona, a haunting reminder of his sinister actions and warped desire for infamy. Through them, he carved himself into the fabric of criminal history, guaranteeing that the horror he instilled would reverberate long after the final letter. Stay tuned as we go deeper into the heart of darkness that was the Zodiac Killer's reign, investigating the subsequent attacks that only added to the legend. Now, let's get into the horrifying details of the Zodiac's confirmed attacks. The Zodiac Killer did not stop with his initial attack. Oh no, his reign of terror persisted, leaving a warped legacy that endures to this day. Following the initial attack on December 20, 1968, in which David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen were tragically ambushed, the Zodiac struck again on July 4, 1969. This time, the location was Blue Rock Springs Park, near Vallejo, California. In this unsettling episode, 2 young lovers, Darlene Farron and Michael Mayhew, were sitting in a parked car, having a quiet, yet late-night moment. Out of nowhere, a figure approached with a spotlight, briefly blinding them before firing fire. Darlene, however, did not survive the attack. Despite his serious injuries, Michael lived to tell the authorities about the terrifying experience. His survival provided a key aspect to the case. Fast forward to September 27, 1969. This time, the Zodiac Killer's deadly playground was Lake Berryessa in Napa County. Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were sitting by the water when a cloaked person approached. The perpetrator tied them up before repeatedly stabbing them, as if it were a horror movie scene. Brian survived the event, but Cecilia died from her injuries 2 days later. What makes this attack especially torturous is the Zodiac's audacity in leaving a letter scribbled on Brian's car door outlining the crime, his mocking signature, a cross-circle symbol, and the dates of his previous murders. Sick, perverse, and completely brazen. The horrific murder of cab driver Paul Stine in San Francisco's Presidio Heights area occurred just 2 weeks later, on October 11, 1969. This time, the Zodiac departed from his typical pattern of assaulting couples. Paul Stine's murder was exceptionally audacious. The Zodiac shot him in the head and then mutilated him, removing a piece of his bloodied shirt to transmit as evidence to the authorities. During this incident, a critical mistake was made. Witnesses saw the killer. Sketches were created, and descriptions matched emergent police sketches from earlier sightings, providing the public a visual representation of the dread they were experiencing. Talk about relaxing. Each crime scene bears disturbing commonalities, as well as terrible innovations. Whether shot or stabbed, indoors or out, the Zodiac never repeated his identical strategy, increasing the sense of panic and perplexity. Each crime left an indelible imprint of precise planning and uncanny calm, a predator with an unquenchable desire for public attention. Michael Mayhew recalls the killer's voice with its distinct lift and purported accent at Blue Rock Springs. At Lake Berryessa, Brian Hartnell described the strange, executioner-style hood with the glasses clip and the formidable knife he held with such icy accuracy. In Presidio Heights, the deliberate, almost leisurely manner in which he destroyed Paul Stine's shirt and nonchalantly walked away imprinted a frightening image of a calm, uncatchable guy on the public psyche. These tragic incidents did more than just add to a sad count. They solidified the legend. Each incident, with its own horrible twist, formed the lore and added layers to the Zodiac's terrifying mystery. He wasn't just a murderer. In his mind, he was staging a devilish opera of death that captivated everybody who witnessed the tragedy. His ability to change, adapt, and outwit others made him nearly mythical, a modern-day boogeyman. Interestingly, despite the diversity in his approaches, some commonalities emerged, such as targeting couples in isolated places and attacking at important times like holidays. The planned combination of persistent brutality and novel wickedness created a throbbing narrative, fueling the media frenzy and disrupting any semblance of public calm. The Zodiac did more than just kill his victims. He plagued an entire generation, causing a ripple effect that would span decades and beyond geographical lines. Thus, each subsequent attack not only added to the mystery, but also cemented his status in the annals of legendary serial killers. The Zodiac, like a horrible painter leaving terrifying brushstrokes, developed a macabre portfolio that evoked both dread and intrigue. It's indisputable that the Zodiac's later strikes, with their hideous daring and frightening accuracy, cemented his position in the dark corridors of criminal history. The legend was based not just on the body count, but also on the unpredictable horror, the unrepentant taunting, and the never-ending game of cat and mouse with the authorities. And this is where the Zodiac Killer thrives, not only by murdering people, but also by tormenting society as a whole. Let's take a look at the intriguing characters that have figured prominently in the Zodiac investigation throughout the years, our primary suspects. When it comes to a mystery as intriguing and infuriating as the Zodiac Killer, there are plenty of suspects. Some were considered due to circumstantial evidence, some due to unusual behavior, and a few were simply unlucky to be in the wrong location at the wrong time. However, despite the countless suspects, none have been definitely tied to every part of the Zodiac's tortuous path of terror. Let's start with the name most closely identified with the Zodiac case, Arthur Leigh Allen. Allen was a troubled schoolteacher who appeared to fit many criteria, perhaps too many according to some. He was ambidextrous, which could explain the variation in Zodiac letters. He had a Zodiac brand watch and even hinted at ideas that sounded very similar to the Zodiac's method. However, despite being a big figure of attention for decades, there was always something lacking. Handwriting experts were unable to definitively link him to the Zodiac's cryptic messages, and DNA extracted from a stamp on one of the letters did not match Allen. Even his close associates, people who knew him well, had differing judgments regarding his guilt. Then there's Lawrence Kane, a suspect whose name isn't as well known outside of Zodiac-related circles, but he's still worth mentioning. Kane himself had a shady past, including a brain ailment that may have hampered his impulse control. Some witnesses claim to have seen him near crime scenes, and his physical appearance was strikingly similar to composite sketches created from eyewitness accounts. However, just like Allen, convincing proof was elusive. Richard Gaikowski was the third, and perhaps most prominent suspect. Unlike Allen and Kane, Gaikowski was never considered a top suspect by the police, but web sleuths and amateur detectives have made persuasive arguments for his involvement. Gaikowski worked for a newspaper, and some Zodiac messages were delivered to its headquarters. In several aspects, his writing style resembled that of the Zodiac, and his appearance was reasonably consistent with the composite sketches. However, like with Kane and Allen, no substantial evidence has ever tied him to the crimes beyond a reasonable doubt. We also need to add Ross Sullivan, who worked at the Riverside City College Library, where one of the Zodiac's probable early victims, Sherry Jo Bates, spent time before being slain. Sullivan had a history of mental illness, wore military-style boots that matched footprints discovered at crime locations, and went missing from work shortly after Bates' death. Despite strong circumstantial evidence, no definitive link was been established between Sullivan and the Zodiac letters or the proven Zodiac murders. And don't forget Earl Van Best Jr., a suspect brought to prominence by his own son in the book The Most Dangerous Animal of All, which was later turned into an FX documentary series. His son, Gary Stewart, believes Van Best is the man beneath the mask. Stewart draws spooky parallels between Van Best and the Zodiac. Physical appearance, handwriting, and even the period of Van Best's life correspond to the Zodiac's active years. Still, detractors believe that the data offered is insufficient to support a confident allegation. Despite these well-known names, the definitive Zodiac identity is as fuzzy as a watercolor painting left out in the rain. Each of the suspects identified has friends and detractors, but the conclusive proof required to bring any of them to prison has proven frustratingly difficult to obtain. None of the DNA, handwriting analysis, or other investigative developments have established a strong enough connection to claim definitively that they have located their man. Finally, the hunt for the Zodiac remains a source of curiosity and frustration. The overwhelming number of suspects and the absence of clear proof indicate that the Zodiac, whoever he was, managed to keep one step ahead of everyone. He captivated the public and perplexed detectives, leaving behind a mystery for the ages, one that, to this day, remains unresolved. The interesting realm of popular culture. It's fascinating how certain stories entrench themselves so strongly in our collective psyche, and the Zodiac case is a prime illustration of this. This enigmatic person has cast a long and persistent shadow over American pop culture for decades. So let's look at how the Zodiac Killer influenced movies, novels, and popular perception. First and foremost, Hollywood has never turned down a good mystery or mayhem story. Perhaps the most noteworthy cinematic dramatization of the Zodiac case was David Fincher's 2007 film, Zodiac, which starred Jake Gyllenhaal, Robert Downey Jr., and Mark Ruffalo, and rekindled interest in the cold case. The film takes a careful approach to the investigation, replicating the laborious work of real-life reporters and investigators. Fincher's riveting, almost compulsive storytelling rekindled public interest and even inspired amateur sleuthing among viewers. However, the Zodiac has left his stamp on more than just the silver screen. This enigmatic killer has captivated the literary world as well. Robert Graysmith's publications, Zodiac and Zodiac Unmasked, are regarded as essential reading for anybody interested in the case. Graysmith worked as a cartoonist for the San Francisco Chronicle during the Zodiac's reign of terror, and became one of the organization's most committed, if unofficial, investigators. His work has had a huge impact, fueling both the public's ravenous curiosity and the ongoing discussion about the case. And let us not forget about fiction. The Zodiac has inspired innumerable fictional works, both directly and indirectly. Consider Don DeLeo's Running Dog, or any number of detective stories in which the protagonist is pitted against a mysterious letter-writing killer who appears all too familiar. In Thrillers and Mysteries, the Zodiac archetype of the mocking, narcissistic killer appears repeatedly. The Zodiac has even made his way into the music industry. Did you know that several bands and musicians mention the Zodiac in their lyrics? His effect in darker musical genres is clear, whether through a passing reference or a thematic deep dig. Beyond art and entertainment, the Zodiac case influenced public ideas about serial killers. For many, he was their first exposure to the idea of a criminal mastermind capable of outwitting police enforcement and the media. The Zodiac's image as a sophisticated, cunning figure has shaped how we perceive real and fictional villains. In some ways, the Zodiac murderer paved the way for the celebrity serial murderer in American culture, a character that taunts, captivates, and frightens the public. This case has also had a significant impact on how we perceive law enforcement's ability to conduct such complex investigations. The failure to catch Zodiac has been both fascinating and frustrating. It serves as a constant reminder of human fallibility in the face of sophisticated criminality, a theme that has appeared in innumerable TV dramas, films, and books about crime and justice. Last but not least, let's discuss the internet. Online forums, YouTube channels, and social media have revitalized amateur detective work, making the Zodiac case one of the most closely watched and investigated mysteries in digital history. Thousands of individuals visit websites dedicated to the case, sifting through information, debating possibilities, and fueling their curiosity. It's almost like a worldwide, never-ending collaborative study. So, whether on television, in paper, in music, or online, the Zodiac is an enigmatic person whose story refuses to vanish into the annals of unsolved crime. This horrific mythology continues to inspire and influence, ensuring that the Zodiac Killer mythos endures for future generations. Grab your tinfoil hats, because it's time to immerse yourself in the wonderfully strange world of Zodiac Killer ideas and hypotheses. The Zodiac's violent crimes not only terrified the public, but he also left behind a trail of cryptic ciphers and taunting messages that have perplexed amateur sleuths and professional detectives for decades. And wow, have some theories evolved? Let's start with one of the more credible theories, Arthur Leigh Allen. Allen's name has been floating around since the beginning, and there are numerous reasons for this. Allen, a convicted child molester known for wearing Zodiac-style timepieces, was first interrogated in 1969 and has since been the subject of numerous police investigations. Handwriting comparisons proved inconclusive, but there were a few strange coincidences. For starters, his physical appearance closely resembled composite sketches, and he owned a typewriter and teletype that were identical to those used by the Zodiac. Despite this, no concrete evidence ever tied Allen to the murders, and some believe his death in 1992 marked the end of the actual Zodiac. But wait, just when you thought things were calm, we get into the strange and unusual. How about Ted Kaczynski, aka the Unabomber? Some see links between Kaczynski's mathematical prowess and the Zodiac's enigmatic ciphers. Both had a fascination with bomb schematics and a dislike for societal standards, but that's where their commonalities ended. Kaczynski operated in a different era and had a different motivation, not to mention that he was imprisoned during some of the Zodiac's active years. Still, it's a theory that comes up frequently in Zodiac speculation sites. Then there's the notion linking the Zodiac to a man named Richard Gaikowski. Gaikowski, a newspaper editor and film lover, had concerns about the case. Some think his voice matched a recording of the Zodiac made during a call to a TV show, and his timetable corresponds to the Zodiac's activities. Furthermore, Gaikowski's work as a journalist may explain the Zodiac's fondness for media attention. Interesting, yeah, but conclusive? Not exactly. We're not finished yet. Earl Van Best Jr. is another suspect who raises questions. His son, Gary Stewart, argues in his book The Most Dangerous Animal of All that his father was the Zodiac Killer. This assertion is supported by a striking likeness to the composite sketch and some coincidental evidence. Stewart also claims that his father's handwriting matched that of the Zodiac's letters, but experts remain divided. It wouldn't be a Zodiac conjecture session without delving into some pretty strange theories. What about a Zodiac satanic cult connection? Some conspiracy theorists claim that the Zodiac murders were part of a ritualistic practice by an underground satanic sect. Wild? Absolutely. Is there any evidence to back this? Not much. The Zodiac symbol, on the other hand, has linkages to many esoteric traditions, which provides just enough gasoline for conspiracy theorists. And if you think that's extreme, let's go interstellar. Yes, some people believe the Zodiac Killer could have been an alien. This argument is based on the idea that the advanced cryptography used in the Zodiac's letters was too sophisticated for humans. It's outrageous, yet it demonstrates how far some people will go to explain the seemingly inexplicable. Finally, we have the theory of numerous perpetrators. This one argues that the Zodiac Killer was not a single person, but rather a collective. This could explain the differing descriptions provided by witnesses, as well as the various tactics used in the killings. Perhaps there was a collective attempt to instill fear and disorder. It's a theory that supports the concept that such a sophisticated crime spree could be the result of multiple disturbed minds. So there you have it, everyone. The Zodiac Killer case is a Pandora's box of hypotheses, with anything from reasonable candidates to outlandish conspiracies. As long as the case is unsolved, conjecture will continue. And who knows? Maybe the next big break is right around the corner. Until then, we'll continue to speculate about the identity of the elusive Zodiac Killer. Despite the Zodiac Killer's cryptic and terrifying legacy, the investigation continues to this day. Let's take a look at the current situation. Technology has been a big changer in recent years, providing new hope for resolving this decades-old issue. One of the most significant breakthroughs resulted from advances in DNA science, namely a process known as genetic genealogy. You may recall that the Golden State Killer was identified in 2018 utilizing this exact strategy. Essentially, it entails comparing DNA from crime scenes to public genetic databases in order to identify probable familial links. Investigators were able to obtain partial DNA profiles from some of the letters ascribed to the Zodiac Killer. While these profiles aren't detailed enough to accurately identify a person, they do provide tantalizing clues that could help limit down the list of prospective possibilities. In 2020, a team of cryptographers claimed to have cracked one of the Zodiac's most infamous ciphers, the 340-character code delivered to the San Francisco Chronicle, causing another surge in enthusiasm. For nearly 50 years, this complicated tangle of symbols eluded all attempts to interpret, but the team was able to translate it using software and pure tenacity. The statement, while enigmatic and unnerving, did not reveal the killer's name, but did confirm his obsessive desire for publicity and fearmongering. This discovery reignited public and media interest in the case, giving another layer to the Zodiac's already enigmatic and sinister character. Furthermore, developments in forensic science have had an impact. Modern investigators are re-evaluating old evidence with new eyes and cutting-edge equipment. Fingerprint analysis, for example, has undergone tremendous advancements. Prints that were earlier deemed too smeared or fragmentary to be useful are now being re-examined using innovative techniques that reveal previously hidden features. In addition to technological developments, the network of armchair detectives is unwavering. Websites, forums, and social media groups dedicated to the Zodiac Killer are still buzzing with hypotheses, new material, and speculative analysis. These citizen sleuths frequently provide unusual views, finding previously unnoticed details or making connections that professional investigations may miss. Despite these hopeful advances, the Zodiac's true identity remains unknown. Some of the original suspects have died, and with each passing year, the odds of finding a living Zodiac decrease. But hope persists. Technology is always evolving, and each new improvement represents another possible breakthrough. As of today, the case remains a terrifying enigma, a decades-long game of cat and mouse. Who knows? Perhaps the solution is out there, waiting to be discovered by the next advancement in forensic science, or pieced together by a keen observer. So, while we may not have clear answers today, the pursuit of justice for the victims of the Zodiac Killer continues. Each day brings us closer to identifying one of America's most notorious criminals. Stay tuned, because the narrative is far from over. Thank you for checking into this episode of Restless Killers and Mysteries with Roger Heilig. I hope you enjoyed our investigation into the Zodiac Killer case. If you caught yourself biting your nails or furrowing your forehead, your aim was done. Remember that today's episode is sponsored by Beyond the Grassy Knoll, How JFK's Death Changed American Society Forever by A.M. Wolfe. It's available on Amazon and Audible, so check it out if you're interested in conspiracies and historical riddles like I am. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and write a review so we know what you think. In our upcoming episode, we will delve inside the chillingly brilliant mind of none other than Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. You won't want to miss this. Until next time, stay curious, safe, and continue to examine the shadows. This is Roger Heilig, signing off.